our resident storyteller, Arthur.
This piece is called Auntie Junie's Christmas Cake, the Kite, and the Fastnet, Gale. My Aunt June learned to cook just after World War II ended, while Britain still had rationing. And there was no butter, no eggs, and no sugar unless you had a coupon in a ration book. And her cooking for the rest of her life reflected those origins. It was prized and praised mostly for its durability. Every year, Aunt June made us a Christmas cake. I think you don't have those here. The closest thing is an American fruit cake, but a fruit cake is made with butter, and Aunt June's English Christmas cake was made with suet, beef fat. If you compare British Christmas cake to American fruit cake, it's like comparing a cannonball to the same American fruit cake, because those two are identical. It's then wrapped in marzipan, which is coated with fondant. You're thinking fondant is slightly flexible. My Aunt June's fondant was so dry and brittle that if you hit it with a fork, it would shatter. But the advantage of this Christmas cake is it did not need to be refrigerated. It would keep on a shelf for the entire year and be just as edible next Christmas. In 1979, in August of 1979, my Aunt June's Christmas cake was still on the shelf. And we were about to go camping on the island of Sark in the Channel Islands, and my dad, who had grown up in the same era and was loath to waste food, said we should bring the Christmas cake with us camping. There was also a kite that I was going to bring with us camping because my dad had brought it back from a trip to Thailand. It was handmade out of bamboo and paper, and it was massive, and it was the head of a snake, and attached to that was a 100-foot roll of paper for the tail and the body of the snake, all of it hand-painted in intricate designs. And there was nowhere where we lived where I could fly a 100-foot long kite. But Sark is the smallest of the Channel Islands. It's only a mile wide and 2.5 miles long, but it is 300 feet high. It juts up out of the English Channel. Where we were camping was a cliff-top campsite next to a 300-foot cliff, the perfect place to fly this kite. We were there for a couple of days with my parents' tent, a little pup tent for me and my younger brother, a little pup tent for my 2 sisters, and Auntie June's Christmas cake. And my kite. And a couple of days in, the wind picked up, and I went out and I flew it, and it just took it right up. I had a 1,000-foot line, and the wind just took it all the way out to the very end of the line. Just looking up at this swoop of line going up 1,000 feet, it gave me vertigo. It was terrifying. It was visceral. But my bright orange and yellow 100-foot long kite looked like a crayon hanging in the sky. And then I felt a drop of rain on the back of my neck. And I looked behind me. The reason the wind had picked up was there were dark storm clouds coming in, and my kite was made of paper. I started rolling it in as quickly as I could, but I realized there was no way. I started grabbing the line, even though it was cutting my fingers, and pulling it down hand by hand, trying to get the kite down before the rain started, and I wish I could say I succeeded. The kite was waterlogged, the ground was soaked when I finally brought it down, and it disintegrated as it touched the grass. I rescued the head, I grabbed as much as I could, took it into my parents' tent. But that was the only time that kite ever flew. It wasn't the only thing to fly that night though, because that storm coming in was the Fastnet Gale. There is a race, a yacht race in England. It goes from the Isle of Wight out to the southern tip of Ireland, the the Fastnet rock, the southernmost point. You loop around the rock, you return back to England and to Plymouth Harbour. It's 600 nautical miles. It takes a couple of days. And in 1979, an unforecast Force 11 gale struck during the middle of the race and decimated the yachts. The entire Irish Navy was launched to try and rescue people. 4,000 people went out to try and save these yachts. It was the largest civilian marine rescue ever attempted. 79 of the 300 yachts capsized, 25 was sunk, 15 sailors were drowned. And we were camping on the top of a cliff on a small island in the English Channel with no idea any of this was happening. We just knew that on the first night of this massive gale, the tent my brother and I were in collapsed on us in the middle of the night. We grabbed our sleeping bags, we crawled out. As we scurried into my parents' tent, I watched our tent with our bags in it lift up off the ground and sail away over the English Channel to join the 25 yachts and never being seen again. We huddled in my parents' tent that entire day, and that night, my sister's tent also collapsed. They were sensible enough to put some rocks on it, but they came in with my parents. So we now had all 6 of us in the tent that my parents had intended just to be for the 2 of them. We huddled there all night. We huddled there all the next day with the rain thundering down, the water leaking through every seam, dripping on us. Everything was drenched. And we sat there and we ate every bite of Auntie June's life-saving Christmas cake. Thank you.